Well, here we are at Clay Mine again, and I'm by, I guess we could call it Clay Mine Rock. And typical, it's starting to rain. It seems to be our luck. So here we are with a wild gooseberry, and the leaves are just starting to come out. And I better not get any closer because it's prickling me. Hi everyone, welcome to my Shoreline Studio. I'm Sybille Muschik. Behind the camera is Joshua Blanc. Now today we're going to be talking about herons again. We've had them in the front of our place for a while. And then we went to Clay Mine Park, which is a park not too far up the road. Just a tiny little park. It's got wheelchair access. And the road that leads to where the herons are is actually closed off. So we sneak in there and are very quiet and respectful of the birds. And there's a bunch of them sitting about 60 feet up in the air and nesting. And we just happened to be lucky enough to catch one of them sitting, and I imagine the babies have hatched by now. So it's quite a different view of them. Usually you see them with their long necks, and this one is sort of hunched over the eggs and quite different. So that's what we're focusing on today, and we're going to be doing drawing. Now I know a lot of people are really leery of the word drawing, which is quite funny. But anyway, drawing is a skill we're born with. So if you've ever watched a little kid grab for, a pencil or a crayon, they're totally at ease. It's a type of language. So I want to make drawing maybe a little bit more accessible by going through some of the mysteries of drawing that, escape some people and maybe help you improve your skills a little bit. So we're just going to fly at it here, and I'll talk about some of the things I've been doing with this heron. We have a good photograph, as I said, and Josh was able to balance the camera at the terrible angle that we had to have it at. But we got a good bunch of photographs, this being one of them. Now our focus here maybe isn't so much on the bird, but on the nest itself, because there's where our drawing challenge is going to be. And I've done a variety of early drawings here. I did a graphite drawing, and then I did a graphite transfer of that on the gel plate. That turned out pretty good. Then I decided to get a little closer and to really focus on the negative spaces. These are these spaces that we're talking about in between all the branches. And I did it on a background and then just drew it in graphite. And that's what we'll be doing today. So, and this one was actually a pastel transfer. And then I have come back in with colored pencil and just really worked with all the different shapes. And this is really a lot of fun, so you have to try this. Then this one talks more about mood. The poor bird sitting on the nest, in the dark, maybe close to midnight, because right now we've got the light going on until about 9:30 before we get sunset. So this is a graphic transfer as well. So here is what we'll be focusing on. But first we have to do gel plate, just a background. And sometimes that can be tricky. So we're going to be just using one color and getting as smooth as we can. We're not going to be using this one because I'm using the open acrylics and they take longer to dry. And we're probably going to take an awful lot of this off. Probably pays to have less paint on, but then it's harder to roll out. So we're sort of taking the middle road here. And to really smooth things out, I sort of go in circles and then just brayer off. And keep working until you have a nice transparent layer. Sometimes, this is Hansa yellow. Sometimes the yellows have a fair amount of white in them. Hansa yellow is fairly transparent. And on the open acrylics and most other forms of tubes have they have these little bars, and then they put the yellow across, and you can see that it's very transparent. And if the black is covered up, then you know it's opaque. So you just a little bit hair more here. Want it really, really smooth. I'm doing that because the images themselves are so busy that you need a quiet space to rest your eyes, and it helps pull a composition together. So I have my paper handy. This is 5x7 gel plate, and just a little bit bigger for the paper. And this is just a multimedia paper. And we'll give it a good rub. And hopefully we'll have a nice background. Now it's quite brilliant, as you see. Now this is going to take a while to dry, and already have a piece prepared for us for today. And it's, I have a couple actually. We could use the blue or the yellow. This is Nico Azo Gold. So it's a softer color, which is maybe more amenable to what we're trying to do today. So we're going to get rid of the plate and just work on the drawing. So wish me luck that I don't mess this up totally. So we're going to focus on the nest more than the bird. But we're going to have this lean on the bird, and that's what I missed, I think, on here. It has a little bit of a lean, but it's not quite right. So just to show you how to get that, so place your hand in about the middle, figure out what your angle is. Like this is 90 degrees, right? And it's not 90, obviously. So somewhere in between is about 45. So with that angle and where you're going to put them, I'll just mark off how high I want the bird to be, about there. And then, and maybe, let's see, okay, so the lean here is 90, right, and 45 is about there. So then that's how you ascertain the angle of it. Okay, so once you have that, and it's not like a really sharp, he's not really leaning forward all that much, but that's just a prey attitude that they have. They are birds of prey after all. You know, they're on our beach and they're looking for things like tadpoles, things like snails, leeches, I hope. We're going to clear our beach of leeches. But that's what they eat, and all, you know, of course, the fishes that we have. So that gives us our angle, so that's a bit better. Now, remember in previous episodes, we've talked about sight sizing. So this is a very small head here, and so how many heads in this body until it hits the nest? So 1, 2, 3, and that's what 1, 2, 3. So right on. So we have to do that. So the size of the head is arbitrary. You might have to adjust. So if you're using your graphite and you need to adjust, so pencil that in very lightly. Now this is a graphite Faber-Castell 9B. It's a fully leaded pencil. I guess you can't really call it a pencil. I'm not sure what you call it. It's just graphite. we're going to just ascertain that the head is going to be about this big. That should do it. Now we've got the head, and then we have three, and then the nest starts here. So that gives us plenty of room for the nest. So you can sort of give it a little outline. Okay, so with that angle then, and his beak is slightly turned up, which we have to remember. And then how many heads is the beak? So it's about the same size as this, so our beak goes to about there. So I'm going to raise it a tiny bit so that the angle is right. Okay, and now we go. And then it tapers down. And then he's got that. So a little bit longer goes down there. And this is an angle, again, pretty close to that 45. So let's draw that in. Then his shoulder, there's a bit of a neck piece here. And then the shoulder. And there's a little bit of a gap there for a highlight. And then obviously you won't be able to see it much because of all the branches, but you know, the body goes on a ways yet. And then you can start drawing in some of the details. Now on the wing here, and this has this shape, sort of a V shape. So when I'm drawing, I'm not naming parts, I'm looking at shapes. And that's how you get away with this idea of symbols. Usually when we're new to drawing, we think in terms of symbols. You know, if somebody says house, you immediately have a picture in your head of what a house looks like, or a dog, or a flower. You know, we have these very simplistic kinds of images in our heads. In terms of art, what you want is masses and shapes. So things that remind you of other shapes. So then the shape of the shadow is along here. And just indicate it. And then there's a nice little highlighted area in here. Again, just indicate that shape. And there's some light coming in. And just draw that in. So we haven't named anything. We haven't said, you know, except for the beak, which we did have to do. And the beak has got this funny shape at the base here. And then the halfway point. And then he's got a nice little shape. Here it's light. And there's sort of a point in there. And then where it goes here, there's a light shape in here. You can mark that off. There's sort of a gray shape in here. It's going to be very graphic. You'll adjust afterwards. All right, and then here we have this black shape. And I don't think you can even see that there's sort of like a dark black wedge shape here, and there's a V. I think the eye is in here somewhere. We're not really focusing on the eye as such because it's so far away you can't see it. Okay, so we have our nice little lean. You can put the trees in. And you can adjust the trees. This is your drawing. If you don't like the trees, I didn't like it coming here. This is a kissing problem where you don't know whether that's part of the bird or that's part of the tree, so you just eliminate it. That solves that. There's a bit of the wings sticking out here. We can put that in. And let's put this other tree in as well, maybe leaning, rather than leaning out of the picture plane, which is what that's called. This whole thing is a picture plane. And then you just give it some interesting shapes, some branchy things. They can be all over the place. You can give it some texture. Maybe an elephant eye. Maybe this is a poplar. Maybe an old branch that's broken off. Just give it some character and some interest. And maybe some texture. Now I want to talk about sensitive line. Now sensitive line has to do with the quality of the line. So for example, if I'm doing like these here, if I'm doing, say, this wing thing, as it's towards you, the line is harder, but as it's going around the edge and away from you, then it tapers off and becomes softer and disappears. That's called a sensitive line. So we'll probably have a few of these as it's curving down. It also becomes less. And there's a few of them. There we go. This is all really dark, so there's that shadow here. So now we go for branches. Now there's an awful lot of them, and there's a tricky thing you can do, and this is the fun part, is instead of drawing the branches so much, you draw the spaces. We have to draw the main branches, and then after that it's all fair game. Obviously it's sitting in a tree, so we've got to have some part of the initial tree showing. So we're just drawing, starting to draw these branches that are going to go all over the place, and most of these are going to be drawn in negatively. By that I mean you don't draw the branch, you draw the space. So how you do is you draw a shape like this, and you go off on there, and you draw another shape, and then this branch starts to reveal itself, and so on. And things cross all over the place after that. So just think of interesting, you can make triangles, round things. So it's dark, it's like here, these are the spaces that you're concerned about, right? And slowly these branches start revealing themselves in the So it's a bit of both, here and there. The shading that's behind, and a little bit of the branch. But most of it's quite negative, in a drawing sense. Yeah, it's positively negative. Yeah, that's right. Okay. You can draw in some of the branches just so you don't get lost, and you'll see, where it sort of leads you as well. So this is a lot of fun, and then even within those spaces, even though they're dark, you can put little branches, and branches coming off the nest like this, of course. It's like a weaving. The birds weave the nest so that they're really stable and strong. So they pick little branches and big branches, and there's a big one sticking out here. Now I haven't put too much in here because that's where all these long feathery things are. Now, one of the things about drawing skills is to be consistent. Figure out how you like to shade, and then shade it that way all the time, rather than being sort of, hit and miss. Generally, I shade sideways like this, and that just gives a nice character to the line. If I'm darkening, then I might go in and cross hatch over top, right? So. And then as branches cross each other, then add a bit of shadow, like here. Now when you finish this piece, this can be used as a graphic transfer where you're putting it on the gel plate and then you get an image like this one. So that's how it ends up. But in the meantime, we're playing with all these crazy shapes. These back and forth, over and under. And this will divert you for hours. And make your branches interesting, nothing the same as anything else. So a nice big shape there, and then maybe overlap it there. You'll start talking to yourself. I guarantee it. There you go. And slowly this whole jumble of mess starts making some kind of sense and looking very interesting. And then you can, of course, add character. These branches are three-dimensional, right? So on a two-dimensional surface. We're going to put a few back here as well. And then these feathery things will be underneath. So you approach the feathers here exactly the same way. So you can give an outline of how they're sort of behaving very lightly. And this is just shade here. So you still have to do all the feathers. It's sort of like a mantle almost. And all these frondy things going down. And to make the lines stand out, you shade in between. And you want it, they're quite thin, so shading is really important here. We'll probably hurry up some of these And again, it's just a quick demonstration of the process because you take a lot of time with this. I took several hours to get this all done, so we're just flying at it furiously as usual. Even though my pace looks slow, you should be much more aware and in control on your own. So we're going to just shade this in. Remember what I said about being consistent. I tend to go at the same angle, and that looks really good as a drawing. And of course the 9B pencil is marvelous for, you can apparently go up to 14. So we're probably going to hurry through this process as far as the video goes because there's an awful lot to do here yet. So I will carry on and Josh will put some music on and we'll just fly through this last part so that you see sort of what the end result is. And of course I have shown some examples and we'll be showing those examples at the end as usual. Get some of these crazy branches in there. So you draw a little bit, give it some shape, and then you give a background piece. And that probably suggests more branches and so on. Now when I'm shading, I'm just using the side of the graphite stick here. So you're not covering up the details that are underneath. The heron is a little grayer here, and it's blue-gray. So be mindful of contours. So contours are just the areas that are rounded. So you don't want your trees or branches to look flat. So a little extra shading there. Wherever the shadows are deepest, you can bring in a little bit of the shading to indicate that the branches are round. And just some lines on the trees to help reinforce that. And there are highlights here on the wings, and again, I'm just leaving those spots. So here the head is very dark, our tree is much lighter, so light against dark, dark against light. Okay, I think you get the idea. So a little bit more here on this tree. And maybe the end has been chopped or something. You can indicate that. You can add a few little squiggly lines. More tiny branches, all sorts of things. But I think you get the idea. And you can adjust. I want to maybe bring some of the light back here in the eyebrow area. So you can use your eraser as a drawing tool as well. This is a kneaded eraser. So if need be, for some of the finer details, just put a sheet down so that you're not smudging your drawing. I'm just going to clean up a little bit of stuff here. And you can use your eraser to get sort of that feathery shape as well. It's got sort of like a little ducktail there. And you can really exaggerate that. It's a harried parrot. Okay. There's a little bit of shading on the top of the beak. So it's more grayish. So you have to do everything with tone and line to get the feeling of differences in tone and color. So I'm going to darken right around where the light is here, so that, again, light against dark, so that the highlights show on the wings. And this is a little grayer, so it just takes some of this down. And use your eraser as a drawing tool. You can, of course, use different B pencils, and right up to H if you want, really differences in tone. Probably, if you're going to be using it as a transfer, it probably won't print. So I'm using 9B because I can use this as a transfer and it will print. So in the darkest areas where there's shade, Again, I'm just following up on contours here. And our light's pretty well coming from this direction, right? So always ascertain light. It's a good idea to maybe put a little arrow there as to where the sunlight's coming from. Otherwise you might get misdirected. So there's light here on the edge, a little bit light coming across to this part, and probably the bottom of this would be darker because the light's hitting the top here. And that would be true of most of the branches. So you could get really carried away with all the detail, but I think we've sort of done what we wanted to do today. So again, thanks so much for joining us today. I hope you try this drawing exercise. It's a lot of fun, and it's a really good way to enhance your skills and to think negatively for a change in a good way. That's the only way to be negative, yeah. So take care of your families and yourselves, of course. Stay well and be kind to each other. And we'll see you again another time. Bye for now. Just a little postscript here. I wanted to talk about the character of some of these pieces. It's really good to do a series. So, and it all depends on the focus. Now, on this one, as you can see, the focus is all on these negative spaces. The bird isn't so important. The branches themselves aren't so important. The spaces are. They have character and they're mysterious, and you know, you sort of want to dive in there and find out what else is in there. With this one, it's the branches that are important, and all these negative spaces being outlined in a way that it calls on the texture. And this one, of course, is all about the bird, the pride and maybe the long suffering sitting on a nest for a long time, you know, having to fly for food eventually and so forth. So it's upright and it has a character, and that's what you're trying to get through in your drawings, to create some kind of a story, a concept, if you like, as to what it is you're trying to say. And then your drawing should then follow that and follow up on, you know, a variety of different ways of working to see, you know, which works, and maybe it works as a series. So that's all I had to say. That was more. Okay.